Yo friends, it's Dan. Welcome back. Welcome to another plastic miniature review, another terrain review. This time for the Renedra timber and log cabin sets. And I want you to know Renedra sent these to me very kindly. I reached out on the advice of a subscriber who had mentioned they have this really extensive terrain line that I wasn't aware of, and asked if they wanted me to review any of their sets. And they very kindly agreed to send not even these two, but 10 sets that we'll be going through here over the course of the next week or so. But I only knew them as the company that other companies use to make their kits. So for example, Perry Miniatures, Gripping Beast, Shield Wolf, I think North Star leverages them for a lot of their sets as well. So you've definitely dealt with Renedra. Anytime you've seen one of these green flats, that's Renedra. Renedra is a huge part of the miniature wargaming hobby. But what I didn't know is that they have their own pretty extensive line of terrain and accessories. So I'm very excited that they sent these our way to check out, because I suspect a lot of you didn't know that either. And if these are up to the same quality that we've come to expect from any other Renedra print, these are going to be really something special. So unusually for me, I haven't actually taken these out of the package yet, because I wanted to show you really quickly what they look like. This is quite reminiscent of what Victrix does with their sets, where you've got a hanging baggie that has the contents inside, and that allows you to see inside exactly what you're going to get from a sprue breakdown standpoint. So I like this. I've said before that if you have any concerns about breakage in transit, it's never happened to me, and everything's getting shipped abroad because I'm in the United States and these companies are all in England. Don't let that, again, I just had a large package sent to me with 10 things in there. It was very carefully wrapped, and nothing's even like dented or anything like that, despite them being in baggies. So I'll say again, as I do with any company that has these hanging baggies, don't let that be the reason that you don't pick something up from them. So we got them out of the packaging here. I wanted to say too that they sent me 10 sets that I've grouped in a way that I think that makes the most sense. So here we're reviewing 2 different sets, but I think that it makes sense to review these simultaneously, because the subject matter is quite similar in this case, and it will allow me to show off how these sets contrast with one another if you're up on the air on like which one do you want to pick up. So I wanted to show these off at the same time. I'll be doing that with some of the other sets as well as we go on. So inside, what you're going to be greeted with, again, I've got them organized by set here, is a card on the top, which serves as like the front of the packaging as we saw, but also on the back are assembly instructions, which is such a simple thing to do, but it makes so much sense. It's something that I hope other companies that utilize like bag hanging designs start doing, because most of them have assembly instructions, but it makes perfect sense to use the other side of the assembly instructions as essentially the front of your packaging, right? So you can see, even from a design standpoint, again, log cabin versus timber cabin, we're talking about from a historical standpoint, like 17th through 19th century simple rustic dwellings. I'm quite familiar with these. I live in the northeastern US. My mom actually used to work at Gettysburg College, so I've been in the like historical space, been to lots of Civil War battlefields where you'll see all kinds of stuff like this. I think the key difference between the two is going to be the roof. You can see here it's more of a tiled roof design on this side versus the vertical sheets of lumber on this one over here. But what's interesting, and I'm going to show that off in just a second, I was just glancing at the sprues. I thought at first it might just be that they're different roofs but the same structure, but they're not. They're similar, but they're actually completely unique sprues, and it appears to me to be completely unique sculpts as well. So let's put these aside for just a moment, and we're going to look at these one at a time. So if you're new here, welcome. What we're going to do is I'm going to look at one set at a time, and I'll have a little note down at the bottom on which set we're on, just in case you're scrolling along, zipping back and forth in the video. You'll know if we're looking at the timber cabin or the log cabin. But I'm going to look at each sprue in detail up close. I'm going to assemble the miniatures. I want to show off how these are going to scale up in particular. I don't have much terrain to show off yet, but I do want to show you how these are going to scale with all of the like 1/56 scale miniatures I've got in my collection from various manufacturers, and then I'll give you my final thoughts. So let's look at the timber cabin first. So again, this is our timber cabin. So remember, it's still a like log cabin design, right, but with a wood plank roof on top. I'll bring some of these sprues back when we're going over the log cabin, just to show you where the differences are, because initially I thought again, it was going to be basically this same core frame over here with just a different roof. But that's not what they did. They're totally different sprues on both of these sets. Really quickly, let me just show off the detail here, because this is where Renedra really shines as a company that produces multi-part plastic miniatures. Again, they've got plenty of experience producing sprues, so it's interesting to see how they did with sculpting as well. And you can see again what we're really going to be caring about. Obviously, we're going to care about how easy they are to assemble, but you can see even just at a glance that they've got grooves where you would expect them to be, where walls are going to go together, even here on the flooring. So I think it's going to snap together pretty nicely. But yeah, look at the wood grain here. Really, really cool. Pay attention to the top part of this wall, right? That it's different in style from the wood below. This is more like planking. But I want you to pay attention to that, because when we look at the log cabin, you'll see that it's different. Got a door here. So it's going to be, I think, very simple to put this together. Do a shot of the walls here. And it is cool just seeing these in 1/56 scale, because as I said, like my childhood involved a lot of touring, like Civil War and Revolutionary War, or American War of Independence as you'd call it across the pond. Battlefields here in the northeastern US. So it's just neat seeing some of these kinds of structures in plastic. Looks like these little end cap pieces are going to go on the ends, like to show off the very end of the log frame. See, it looks great again. Both the inside and the outside are detailed like this, which is great for, again, if you have a war game where you want to take the roof off, right, for any kind of like skirmish level play. You can have an interior to these as well. So, and then here's the roof part. So let's do a shot maybe just of the front of this one, because the back doesn't have any detailing on it, which I can just show you there. But you can see here grooves too, where this is just going to rest right in on top of the walls. But again, yeah, look at the detailing on this. Really cool. It also kind of looks like a dock to me. So they already have a pretty extensive range of terrain, but it makes me eager to see how it's going to expand in the future. So really great. Again, even like little details, like you can see the individual nails that aren't even either. Make it look like a person actually nailed that roof down. So let's look at the log cabin now. Again, that was the timber cabin. So you note here that the composition of the sprues are different, right? We had one frame that had the roof before. Now we have the roof and the walls shared. So I think these are a mirror image of one another, which would make sense to me. Yeah, it looks like it's in that way. When the roof goes together, it looks like a completely different roof on either side. And I think, yeah, the walls are similar to each other, but this is where I want to bring in the other frame here. So like one at a time, so I want to be careful just to that you don't get confused, because I'm going to get confused too. So again, on the right, I've got the log cabin. So let me really quickly just show off that wall that I was talking about earlier. So again, this is the timber cabin on the left. So you see how the frame is different on the door, and you see how the top here is different. It's subtle, right, but significant enough that I'm confident in saying these are two unique sculpts. We do the same thing here. Again, log cabin on the right, timber cabin on the left. That the window design you can see is different on the left versus this one here, right? And of course the roofs are completely different on either side. So I'm confident in saying, again, I think they're going to complement each other very nicely. If you wanted to pick up both sets for yourself for, say, a Revolutionary or a Civil War battlefield, or of course me as a fantasy gamer, you could use these for whatever you want, which is what I'll be doing. But that if you wanted to pick up both, it's not like you're going to have a carbon copy of the same set. There is a subtle difference to them. So again, this is the flooring and the two short sides of the house here. One door on this one too. Looks like there were two doors on the other one. There's another key difference between the sets. And I'll just show off one of this frame because it is the same. And once again, really excellent work on the wood grain here. And then on the tiling on the roof as well. So beautiful work. I mean, really fantastic. Again, no surprise coming from a company like Renedra, who has so much experience with producing multi-part plastic sprues. But I'm eager now to see how these go together. I think they're going to be reasonably straightforward to assemble, but I'll report back in just a second. All right, let me show you these assembled models before I start doing some scale comparisons. I wanted to just show them up close here and talk a little bit about the assembly. They were super easy to put together. I mean, you can see they were like, 10 pieces per building. So not difficult at all. It's always obvious to me too when a set is designed by people who actually build models, which you would assume is always the case, but I can assure you it's not. Certainly in this era of CAD, you could have some really talented artists who can maybe design a miniature, but who perhaps don't wargame themselves and who don't actually sit down to put models together. So it's little things about a set like this that make it clear to me that the people who designed it are the same people that would actually be putting it together. A couple of small gaps, which I think could be mitigated just from using plastic cement instead of super glue. Certainly the seam on this roof is negligible. But again, I use super glue just because it allows me to then tear things apart after reviews if I want to. A little gap down here as well, which again you could, I think even just from rubber banding it would probably smush that together, but that's so small that it's not even something I'm worried about. I'll just paint straight over it. But yeah, it was very easy to put together. I don't clean miniatures up beyond just the contact points. So you can see there's a little bit of the way of mold lines, especially on these extra pieces that have to be glued on, right? But I think with a file, you'd be able to clean those up without any problem at all. This one, I decided to leave the roof detached, which makes it very handy for skirmish level games. Of course, the door is glued shut, but you could glue it open if you wanted to, or if you were feeling ingenuitive, come up with some kind of plastic piece to go over that to make it a hingeable door. But in this case, I just glued it shut. But then you could paint the whole interior. For the roof, to do that, I would recommend you stabilize it in some way. I just glued some pieces of sprue to the bottom of the roof there, and then it just drops into place on top. So makes it very handy for skirmish level games. And that was the log cabin, so now we're looking at the other one. So in this case, I did glue the roof down. I left this door off because I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet, but for no other reason, I guess, just than the juxtaposition of having one roof glued on and one not. So again, a couple of minor points where there were some gaps, like this wall actually has a small gap down at the bottom, and it is flush at the top. So again, though, I think if you had rubber banded it, certainly when you're gluing the roof on, you could do that without any issue. Right, and then that's going to put pressure down here when it's being glued together. Or again, you could just put a little bit of green stuff down there. I think, again, paint is going to look just fine. And again, it's a log cabin, right, so it's not supposed to be a perfect seal all the way around. So I think that it looks fantastic. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to paint. Let me bring in some other stuff here. I want to show you some scale comparisons with some different manufacturers. So first things first, I wanted to show you just how many miniatures you could fit inside of a little structure like this. I've got some accessories set up from the Victrix market stall and chests set, and then some figures here from Fireforge, Wargames Atlantic, Perry Miniatures there, Warlord, Victrix at the door, Oathmark. So you can see, I mean, comfortably, you could certainly cram a few more in there, but for a little role-playing game scene, this would work just fine. Or again, for skirmish level games, you could have a few models in here, I think, comfortably and still be able to move things around. And a quick scale shot here just to show you how some different manufacturers are going to stack up in terms of height right up against one of these buildings. So I think you'll agree, I would feel confident using this in any war game, using any of these figures that I'm displaying here. And of course, the height and width of the two buildings are the same dimensions, which is why I can then take this one out and slot this one in without changing the configuration at all. So yeah, everything's going to work just fine with these. Again, the door is a little bit short, but that is also true of period buildings. That I can tell you, I'm 6 foot, And having gone into buildings like this on historical battlefields, like I usually have to crane my neck a little bit to get inside of them. And on the topic of scale, I thought you might also like to see how these two buildings look side by side. Again, their dimensions are identical. So you could have them right next to each other if you wanted to, but certainly on the same battlefield without any issue. And one more scale comparison to make, just to head off the inevitable questions, as I've got an assortment of those Victrix market stall and treasure chest items scattered around the building here, just to show you how they're going to look next to them. You should note too that Renedra also has their own set of barrels. I don't have them yet to review, but we'll check them out eventually. It's just something else to be aware of, but you can see here too that they're all going to scale up just fine. So what's the final verdict? I think these are exceptional. Little buildings that can be used, obviously at face value, for any like black powder era conflict to have as terrain. Yeah, again, you can use them in a skirmish format, you can glue the roof down, have them just as impassable terrain on your battlefield. No problem whatsoever. But I want you to look beyond that too, because think about it for applications like in fantasy settings, right? Certainly for D&D, Mordheim, I'm constantly talking about that. But really also think about it within the context of being a chassis of a building that you could then modify, right? Say, for example, you don't want it to be a log cabin. If you wanted to have some stonework down at the bottom, it'd be very easy to take something like this, which is just spackle. I've done this before. I'll do this in another video just to show you what I'm talking about. That you could either just spackle over it and leave it, and then you could have like a partially spackled building, or you could, you know, glue in some pieces of foam, like stonework, down around the bottom. Or consider too, I guess Renedra, cover your ears, but that you could cut this building in half, right? Just take a saw after you've assembled it or partially assembled it, cut it in half, and now you can then glue in some like pieces of wood to make it look like a blown out building, right? It has little beams that are exposed, either to make two pieces of a building that is like destroyed as ruins, or to make them, again, in a situation like this where it's a partially attached roof, two halves of it that you then have for game systems like Mordheim, like now Pillage, right? Because that's the truth. Again, I know that maybe for many of us, this kind of design of shelter is iconic to a particular era of, again, my own U.S.-centric view of, early Americana. But I think this kind of structure could work for a whole host of different game systems and conflicts and projects, right? And I've saved the best part for last. I don't normally talk about price, but it really can't be overlooked here, that each of these buildings they're 10 pounds. 10 pounds. And if you get two of them, I think it drops to 8 pounds each, right? So again, don't just think about it within the context of black powder era games like the US Civil War or something like that. Yes, they're going to be excellent for something like that, but the price point is so right for you to pick these up to use for whatever you want, right? Because again, for 8 pounds, if you pick up two of these to then cut up and use as various bits of terrain if you wanted to, the price is right for that kind of thing. So check it out. I got a link down in the description to the Renedra site. I mentioned we're going to be doing lots of Renedra reviews here in the coming week or so, so stay tuned for that. But you should go explore that site if you're not familiar with any of it, because they've got really cool stuff that I'll bet you didn't know they had. Again, we're going to be looking at like their tombstones here in a moment. They've got variants of their buildings that are like ramshackle variants where they're already kind of run down, and they also have, I've mentioned that they provide bases for a lot of companies. They have their own line of textured bases, which are also incredibly reasonably priced. So again, link to the Renedra site down in the description. Please go check them out. Massive thanks to Renedra for sending these to us. I'm really excited. Again, I'll have a separate video where I'm going to go through and modify these a little bit and paint them up, but I wanted to show them straight out of the box for this video in particular. Grateful to all of you for dropping by for this one in the meantime, and until next time, happy gaming.